Good morning. Welcome. So today we continue to look at David, and we're thinking about the change that happened in David's life. It's quite interesting. Often with the scriptures, it's important to see exactly, to notice the changes. There are examples of this, perhaps in the Acts of the Apostles, when in the later chapters of the Acts of the Apostles, the way it's written goes from they went here, they did that, they did the other, Paul and Silas, or Paul and Timothy went here and they went there. And then suddenly, in the middle of them going somewhere, we start doing this. We visited here, or we stopped at Troas, or we went here, or we went there. And we know from that change in the way it's written that Luke, the writer of the Acts of the Apostles, was with them for that period. And he's, without even thinking about it, changed the way he talks about the situation. And this happens here all the way through the story of David taking Bathsheba. All the way through the story, she's referred to as the wife of Uriah the Hittite, or Uriah's wife. And then after the child has died and David has been forgiven, verse 24 of 2 Samuel 12 says, "Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba," not Uriah's wife or the wife of Uriah the Hittite, but his wife Bathsheba, "and went into her and lay with her, and she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon." And this is the most wonderful picture to me of forgiveness and restoration. God no longer regarded Bathsheba as Uriah's widow, as an adulteress. No longer is the text using those phrases, but Bathsheba has become David's wife. And the sin is forgiven. The terrible sins are forgiven. And this is the wonderful truth of the gospel here in a nutshell. Because not only are they both forgiven, Bathsheba is no longer regarded as an adulteress, that is, as the wife of another man, but as David's wife. And David is no longer guilty. It doesn't mean that he didn't do it, but it means that his heart, his prayer of Psalm 51 has been answered, and he has been worshipping the Lord, and he is restored to fellowship with God. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful picture of salvation. There is nothing that any of us can ever do that is so awful that we can't be forgiven. That's a sweeping statement. And I know, almost as I say it, that just like in my mind come the names of people I know who have been absolutely horrific people, and the things they've done and things we know they've done have been absolutely awful. But if we believe the gospel at all, we know that the forgiveness of God covers everything. There is nothing that has been ever done that is so dreadful that it can't be forgiven. Jesus bore it all. Jesus bore it all. So if you think of the worst person you've ever known or ever heard of, the ISIS people, the people who planted the bomb 20 years ago in New York. Well, they didn't plant a bomb, did they? They sent airplanes into the people who planned all of that, the people who planted bombs, the suicide bombers in London, the people who've done absolutely dreadful, dreadful things. Their sin is forgiven if they turn to Jesus. So I can say to you with absolute assurance that there is nothing you have ever done that will keep you away from God except refusing to turn to Jesus. It's the only thing that will keep you from fellowship, from forgiveness, from life. And it's so complete, this forgiveness for David, that he calls his name Solomon. Solomon has the same root letters as the word for peace, shalom. Solomon, he was the man of peace, the son of peace. He was the son who was going to follow David, who was going to be the one to build the temple, because his hands would not be soiled with blood, as David's had been, with the blood of enemies. Solomon was going to be a great king, and to take a great king from the union that had been the reason why terrible things had happened to people is again another indicator, another demonstration, very strong demonstration of the great love of God and the great forgiveness of God. And Nathan comes to him. It says, and the Lord loved him. It's in verse 24. And the Lord loved him, this child, this new baby. And there was a message sent through Nathan, and he was nicknamed, I think, because he's never referred to by this name, Jedidiah, which my footnote says, beloved of the Lord. Names are very important. Names are very important. And there are times when I really, really shudder at the names that have been given to children by modern pop stars and famous people. The names they've given to their children just make me want to despair of this generation, because people don't understand the importance of names, of the meaning of names. It's so important. But here we are. This is restoration in 2 verses here for David. Complete restoration. And that's where we'll leave it this morning, that God's forgiveness is complete. But unfortunately for David and for all of us, that our sin very often creates a knock-on effect. And it does for David, and we'll see it in his life, that the things that he has done that have now become public knowledge change the way his sons and the people around him react to him. And unfortunately, that's the enemy's attempt to destroy a great man of God. And terrible things are going to happen to David, as we know. But at this moment, he is completely forgiven. He and his wife comfort each other in the loss of the baby. And that's a very important thing too, that when tragedy comes to us, we should not isolate ourselves from those we are closest to. We should be together in the difficulty, not let the difficulty separate us, not try and do the grieving alone. We do it together, and it makes us stronger. That's enough for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.